Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Love Logically. I am your host, Sherry, and I am really excited to embark on this journey with you. I'm not sure if you're like me or not, but I have said why a lot, such as, why is it so hard to find a good person? Why is it so hard to find somebody who will treat you the way that you want to be treated? Just why? Just why? Why is there pee in the dating pool and dead animals and all the things? Like, I don't understand. I don't get it. So, after my last breakup, I decided to spend at least a year by myself, and I'll explain to you why why a year. Some of you are like, "Wow, that's not very much time," and I get it. Um, I spent time trying to figure out why. What was I doing wrong? What could I do better? Are there tips and tricks and techniques? And what I found was science. There's literally science-backed ways of thinking about how to approach mating, dating, and relating. I know, it's kind of crazy, right? This forum, Love Logically, is going to be talking about scientific methods and theories, and basically, going through and talking about the evolution and the anthropology, the history, psychology, evolutionary science, neuroscience, all the ologies, all the sciences to talk about why we do what we do. Um, and our romantic behaviors, what makes us tick, what draws us to certain people, how to build long lasting foundations. Now, mind you, science isn't everything. We do have this gray matter in here that gives us choices and all those kinds of things. But we know that science is a good predictor. So if you follow some of these steps or some of these, techniques, or start thinking about love from a scientific perspective, it could be helpful, but it's not a guarantee. All right, so just a little bit about me. I'm an educator and I have been a teacher for a really long time. I'm a social studies teacher, so this is the reason why I geek out on things like anthropology and history and sociology and psychology and all the things. But it's really been my lifelong mission to help people learn and grow. I'm also a certified life coach and goal coach. I chose not to be a dating coach because I'm like, I kind of feel like you need to have your dating stuff together a little bit more than I have mine together before you can start telling other people how to do it. But what I can do is organize, get people who do know more about these things together, start having conversations with people and bringing the information at least to the forefront. As I'm learning, we can learn and grow together, and see maybe if we can do better in the future. So I'm in my 50s, and it's very different out here than when I first started dating. So much different. We did it in the wild. That's what I called it. You would meet people at grocery stores, you'd meet people on campus, you would meet people, through other people, you'd meet people at barbecues, at the club, that kind of stuff. But now most of it is online. And my last three relationships, I met them online. And a little bit more about my dating history, which you will learn way more than you ever wanted to know through these episodes. I feel like I've been in a relationship for 25 out of like the last 27 years. And I literally went from like one relationship to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, without really taking any time to process or figure me out or any of those kinds of things. So that's what I'm doing now. That's what this year plus. So it's been longer than a year. It's been about a year and 3 months since my last relationship. And that one was long distance, a little weird, and we'll be talking about that one anyway. So it almost felt like I wasn't in a relationship sometimes, but I took that time to like really look at myself and what I was doing wrong. I had to take a deep dive into my trauma, really be vulnerable with myself, and like, what is it that I'm doing that I need to do better? Um, what is it that I need to heal so that I can move on to something different? Because honestly, my ex-fiance, my ex-husband, and my ex-boyfriend all had similar issues, even though they were completely different people. And that was, being emotionally available. The physical intimacy pieces were an issue, and things like honesty, to be honest, as well as some other things that were very, very similar, even though they were all in different packages. And that's on me. There was something about me that was drawing me to these men, and I don't want any more of them. So I had to really, really think about this and start looking at what I was doing instead of just saying, oh, well, he's this and he's that and he's that. No, no, that was me. And we'll talk about those things too. So I read research papers, I took courses, I talked to experts, I've had conversations with lots of friends. I have listen to the dating coaches. I am just in it. The blogs, the podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And something that I found was the people who talked about science tended to all agree about certain ways that we should date and relate to each other to help us be a little more successful. Again, science teacher, definitely exciting. Yay. And by the way, I'm an overachiever. So when I'm telling you I dove into it, I dove into it. This is pretty much what I've been doing for the past year and a half, almost year and a half. And really trying to look at how to do things better. So we are going to have lots and lots of conversations about what I found. We might have a book club. We'll do all kinds of stuff. It'll be fun. You're going to enjoy it. All right. I learned so many different things. I learned about my attachment style. I learned about some things that I needed to fix internally and externally, things that I was doing that were completely against science. So there's all of that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about things like the 90-day rule. Should there be a 90-day rule? Why do we have one? What is ghosting? What is breadcrumbing? What is stashing? Should we put up with it? Is it okay to ghost somebody? All that, what does it mean? How do we keep them interested? How do we get them interested? How do we biochemically bond to each other? What happens if we're attracted to somebody, but we're not actually biochemically compatible? That can actually happen. All of these things go back to our primitive brain. And as a teacher and talking about trauma-informed practices, we've had to really learn about how the brain develops in kids and how we talk about it, our reptilian brain, and how that can affect us to this day when it comes to trauma and our fight and flight and freeze responses and those sorts of things. All of that is, from hundreds of thousands of years of, trial and error of our ancestors. And it's like, oh, this worked. We're going to go ahead and carry this forward. And we have all of that programming in our brainstem and our amygdala, our reticular activating system, that kind of that kind of thing. Um, and now we have all this pesky brain matter that's around it, which gives us choices and all that kind of stuff. But we still have these very, very primitive impulses and desires and ways in which we come together. So we will be talking about a lot of those things. And let's be real about this. Marrying and being together and being in relationships for love is a new concept. It's just a new concept. In the past, it was about social status, it was about economics, it was about family connections, it was about, uh, we would have kings that would marry princesses of another country so that that would bring families together and create a bond and a union. So we had these, political bonds that came together. And it's just like, you got my back, I got your back because we're family now, that kind of thing. It's not because these people were in love. Absolutely not. So, you know, we have that even to this day. We have arranged marriages, we have child marriages, we have people whose families, if their family doesn't like someone, it's not happening. So there's that, so there's all of that. It's just like these things definitely play a part. And we're not just looking at someone and going, oh my God, I'm so in love. I'm so in love. Let's get married. We're also looking at finances and we're looking at, um, you know, are they attractive enough that we want to have children with them? These are all part of that primitive brainstem that comes into play that we'll talk about later. And just to give us an example, I'm going to use the British royals, okay? Because I just used, like the king and princess piece. So Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. That's a good example. England and Spain. Then we have later on down the line, much later, let's go with Queen Elizabeth's family. We have Charles and Diana get married. They're not, well, Diana's in love. Charles is not. He's in love with Camilla. He can't be with her because it's inappropriate according to the family and the rules of the church and things. So he ends up marrying Diana, who is now going to be miserable after she finds out that he's having an affair with Camilla still, and that he's truly in love with her and not Diana. And so she's depressed, she's bulimic, she's suicidal, and then eventually she's going to die tragically. They do have two amazing boys, but let's talk about the boys. William definitely had to be careful who he was going to marry because that person was going to potentially be the future queen. So Kate couldn't just be anybody. So Kate and William get married. They've got a couple of kids. Now Harry comes into the scene thinking about getting married. He decides that he's going to marry Meghan. The only reason why it was okay for him to marry Meghan is because they didn't really need him anymore. The spare wasn't necessary. William's got three kids. So now, of all of them, Harry actually got to marry for love. And look what that happened to him. He married this Black woman, the family will not pay attention or even try to understand some of the racist crap that they have, put on her. And let's be real, this country has conquered and colonized most of the Black and brown world at some point. Yeah, I'm thinking that they're gonna have a few ingrained racist attitudes. Just saying. And then if we even wanted to go back further, we could go to Queen Elizabeth's uncle, King Edward. He was the King of England. I don't think he'd been coronated yet, but he literally gave all of that up because he was in love with a woman named Wallis Simpson, who was a twice divorced American. And everybody was like, absolutely not. Because they're supposed to marry like little, young virginal, never been touched, good families, like high in the noble ranks kind of people. And she was not it. So he literally gave up the crown of the most, I would say, one of the most powerful countries in the world, because at this point, it was not just England, it was the Commonwealth, and they still had huge territories in other parts of the world. And he gave it up for love, which completely different podcast. That is a good thing because he was a Nazi sympathizer. So could you imagine how the war would have turned out if we weren't allies with Great Britain or if we were? But that's a whole different rabbit hole. Again, history teacher. Um, but yeah, so he gave it up for love. So then his brother gets to step in and be king. And they called him Bertie. And he had lung cancer. He's going to die earlier than expected. And Elizabeth has to step up. Elizabeth actually seemed like she did marry for love. She was in love with Philip since she met him, as a teenager. And thank goodness he just happened to be a prince. But her sister wasn't able to marry the person that she loved. Her son wasn't able to marry the person he loved in the beginning, et cetera, because of all of these duties and things. Because people back in the day did not marry for love. So now we have to put that into the equation that we never had in the equation before. I know, it's just crazy. Something else that we need to put into the equation that we haven't really thought about is the role of feminism. How has that played a part? I love the fact that I can have a job and my own bank account and my own credit cards and sign my own lease and get my own car loan, which was not something you could do before 1974. But now we have all of these women out here who do not need a man to financially provide for them like we used to, which was that provide and protect piece, which is literally ingrained in our brainstem and our amygdalas and our reticular activating system. I'm going to say that right at some point. Um, but we don't have to have that. Some of us don't have to have that anymore, but yet it's still ingrained in there. So how do we work with that? It's definitely messing with our polarity. We have masculine and feminine, and they need to come together as one to make this perfect union, I guess you could say. And I'm saying energy, not necessarily gender itself, because these principles will apply even if we're talking about same-sex situations. So there's that part. Um, and there are just so many things. There are just so many things. So we're going to talk about all the things. We're going to talk about things from all of the bonding, biochemical stuff, all the way down to the little things like how often should you text? Who should pay for a date? Those kinds of things, and why those are actually wired and what they trigger within people scientifically, depending on how they act. So it's I've just been fascinated. I've just been fascinated. So I am really, really, really excited to get started on learning about love together and how love is scientific and or can be scientific. Because in my 50s, I am definitely going forward with a different mindset. My next love, I intend to be my last love. I don't have a lot of time left. And that brings up something too. We need to be dating with intention because in our 20s and 30s, we're thinking about who to have children with. And you know, the parents of your children are probably going to be some of the most important people in your life, and especially in the lives of your offspring. Then in like your 40s, 30, late 30s and 40s, if that first relationship didn't work, we might be out here looking for step parents. So that means someone who could be a role model and bring, good values and care for that child as well as you into the mix, which is a heck of a lot harder than dating without kids. Um, Most of us in our late 40s, 50s, etc., aren't raising children, although there are some that still are. But usually they're older, and we're not looking for someone who's going to be quite as hands-on, just maybe be a positive influence, a positive role model, and, keep it moving. We're looking more for companionship and for those things that are going to complete us and make us happy and give us peace for the rest of our days. Somebody you can grow old with and continue to laugh with and have, you know, an intimate connection with, whatever that might look like. Because that brings along new challenges that we will talk about because that's biology and there's chemistry involved with that and those sorts of things. So I'm going to stop talking now and we are going to start making some of this content. But I just wanted to thank you so much for joining me for this very first episode. I am, as you can tell, really excited to start this journey with you. So until next time, remember that love isn't just a feeling, it's also science. We're going to talk all about it. So until next time, can't wait to see you.